The most tragic thing I remember is Mother dying.
You were really young then, too.
Yeah, I was 14. Eugene was 3.5, and Julie was just a baby. She was, what, 6 months old? She was born in May, and Mother passed away just before Thanksgiving. And that left your mother to take care of Julie and Eugene and Harold and me. She had a big job on her hands.
And Jim.
Yeah, and Jim. And as soon as Jim graduated, he took off with the Air Force.
And I had to keep it a secret till he was out of town.
Yeah, till
Dad.
the bus left. So,
And all day he'd say, "Where's Jim?"
and Lila'd say, "I don't know." Oh, we had horses. We always rode horses. I remember Lila getting on horses. She'd ride, sometimes about 3 of us would get on one horse. Of course, we were small and the horses didn't care. I don't know, them horses were really good too.
Lindy.
Yeah, Lindy.
Lindy was the one that was.
Yeah. Their mother was a Mustang, I guess. She had a brand on her. Dad bought her at Waveman, right off the train that they brought those horses in from the west. I remember the horse. He was a blue-gray roan type horse. Pretty horse. You remember that? Was it you that the horse grabbed by the hair and picked up, or was that Marie?
I think that was Marie.
Yeah. But that was the Mustang. See, Dad used to break them. But we farmed with horses till I was, what, 10, 12 years old. Just a team of horses. And then Dad, he'd buy a tractor every once in a while, and I don't know, they were always something wrong with the tractor, and he'd always go back to the team of horses. Yeah, I was drafted. Then got 2 years. I spent my basic training in Fort Leonard Wood. Edward R. Morrow was a news commentator. I know you're too young to remember him. But he had a saying. He said, "To you mothers who have a son in Korea, write to him. But you mothers who have a son in Fort Leonard Wood, pray for him." And I can believe that too. Oh, hills. You get a shower. After the shower was over, they'd tell you to put your raincoat on. And it was that red clay. And you'd walk in that red clay and get mud on your boots. You couldn't hardly pick them up. But you'd have dust in your face. That's the only place I've ever been that you could walk in mud and have dust in your face. So it's, yeah, it wasn't all bad. I was shipped to Germany. We run on the way over to Germany, we ran right into a hurricane. I forget the name of the hurricane, but we got considerable damage to the ship apparently, and we sailed right into the eye of the storm, and that's an experience. You just look all the way around you and there's just a black wall. And that black wall looked like it was no more than a half a mile away. And that sea was just as calm as a tabletop in there where we were. And he kept that ship in that eye of the storm for, several hours. I don't know just how long, but they made emergency repair. And then we sailed on through it, and of course the storm had pretty well calmed down by that time too, thank goodness. The ship's mate that I worked for going over in the ship's store, we put up the groceries for the cafeterias and mess halls. he said he had sailed the Great Lakes for I forget how many years. And he said he only was seasick once on the Great Lakes. And he said that first time he'd ever got seasick on the Atlantic. And he said he'd much rather get weather a storm on the Atlantic than on the Great Lakes. And he told us why. But other than that, it was a 90 millimeter anti-aircraft unit, 67th Artillery, for 6 months, and then they brought the missiles in, the Nike missile. And that was the first missile battalion in Europe. Yeah.
Whereabouts in Germany?
That was in Worms, spelled just like it sounds.
Was that close to the border?
No. Well, I say no, it was close to the border, the French border. It wasn't more than, I think, maybe 20 or 30 miles from the French border. Yeah. We're not too far from Mannheim. And that's right on the Rhine River. We were right on the Rhine River, too. Well, not right on the river, but, you know. But, yeah, it was interesting. We were attached to the Air Force after we became a missile unit to the Rhine-Main Air Base in Mainz, M-I-E-N-Z, I think it is. So, yeah, I used to travel that. Mainz is right on the river, too, the Rhine River. I made several trips up and down the Rhine River. And that was interesting. We bought a new car, a new convertible, a little Studebaker 1963, which I've restored. And we went to Indiana, down where your mother got married. We thought we could go down there, get married, and come back and be married. Well, things had changed. We got down there and they said, no, you got to have a blood test and it'll be a week. So we came home, and a week later we went back and got married. We came back, we were building a house. I started that before we were married. And weekends, I'd go pick her up at the bus station over to Elman. She'd come back and she'd help me on the house what she could. And we've got the house, the basement. It was a walkout basement, you know. And we got it so it was livable. And we moved in right after we got married, and we had a table that was given to us, table and chairs, and I think, I don't know if there's one set, chairs and a folding bed. Folding cot, that's all we had to sleep on. But that week we went to go furniture shopping, yeah. Nathalie had saved some money, and she had enough money to buy a stove, refrigerator, and what else did you buy with that?
I bought the washing, drying, stove, and refrigerator before we got married.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, we were kind of pretty well set. Yeah, they had a big chivalry, and they were supposed to. Her brother he put some dynamite out there in the backyard or somewhere out there, and he was that was supposed to go off about the time they started the chivalry. Well, it had a delayed fuse for some reason, and everybody was in the house when the dynamite exploded. And but I heard the dog bark. We had a little beagle named Tiger, and he started to bark and putting up a real fuss, and I knew there was something going on, so I stepped out with a shotgun, you know, because we'd had prowlers before and kids monkeying around. And anyway, I stepped out with a shotgun, and I seen a guy sneak in behind the car, and I looked up the road. I had a big flashlight, and I shined that flashlight up the road, and I see the road was full of people, and I says, oh yeah, I know what's going to happen. So I fired that shotgun in the air right over the top of the car, and that guy was on the other side of the car. Needless to say, he was a little bit scared. I stepped back in the house and closed the door. And, well, then about everybody showed up and banging on the door and pots and pans or whatever. And yeah, we had a fireplace. Nathalie and I made our own fireplace. And everybody wanted to light that fireplace, and they wanted me to make popcorn for them. I'll never forget that. So we had popcorn, and well, they wanted us to make, I don't know, breakfast for them too, I guess.
Pancakes, but Lila and Marie brought food.
Yeah, that's right. Lila Marie bought food.
Sandwiches and stuff.
But we had a good time. Yeah. Mike, I was at work. Nathalie called the shop. I worked for a dealership, Alice Chalmers. She called the shop and she said, don't be late for dinner and don't go home or don't go out on a service call. And I asked her why, and she says, well, I think it's about time. And so, yeah, I hurried right home, and about an hour later, I didn't wait very long. About the time I got her to the hospital while he was on his way. And Patty, no excitement there at all. It was just routine. But Joe was a different situation. What was in the early morning, the alarm hadn't went off yet, and I don't know, did you wake me up?
I was up.
Yeah, you were up laying on the Davenport. I went out there in the living room and I asked her how long that had been going on, because I realized she was having pains, and she says, well, for I don't know how long, but she says, and I asked her how often those pains were coming. She says, about every 3 minutes. Whoa, wait a minute. I didn't have time to call the neighbor to take care of Patty and Mike, so I run the kids up, put them in the car, come back and helped her up the stairs and put her in the car, and we headed for the hospital, and it was raining. Oh man, it was raining. And we got just south of Stanton. I got behind a guy, and he didn't want to travel anymore, in about 20 miles an hour. And here she was yelling in the back seat. And I finally passed him. I run him right off the road. I cut him right off when I come in, because traffic coming into town, you know, it was time to go to work for everybody. And I topped the hill about a mile from the hospital, and she was really serious. She was telling me to stop, and I says, no, I'm too close to the hospital. And I think I was running about 80 or 90 by the time I got to the hospital. And I hit the brakes real hard when I made the turn in the driveway, and at that time there was a awning out over the door of that old hospital. And I hit the brakes and cranked it off, and it was just wet enough, and it just went out perfect. I slid right under that awning. So and then I ran in to the hospital there, and it was right when the shift change for the nurses was. And I told the nurse there, I said, my wife is having a baby. And they were just, well, so what? You know, usually it's a couple hours before it really happens. And the one girl in there, she knew my wife. And she said, no, she is. She says, oh boy. And she started getting excited and running for the door. Well, the other nurses kind of took the hint, I guess, because everybody started to move then. I had 2 shifts of nurses there, and that one lady, she was a big girl. She'd worked there for years. I don't remember her name. But anyway, she was an RN, and she had delivered before. And anyway, I sat there and just inside the door with Patty and Mike, and I was about half dressed because I didn't even wait to tuck my shirt in, you know. But anyway, he was born right there in the car. I asked him if they wanted me to put the top down. I said, that way you can get her out a little easier. And that big old nurse, she says, oh, no, we can handle her. So Joe was born in the car. And
Patty and Mike knew where babies came from in a hurry.
Boy, all except for Tim. And I think it was around 3 in the morning. We went to the hospital. We took off a little early that time, not taking any chances, you know. Yeah. And anyway, I think I waited for him about 2 hours. And that, well, about an hour. Wasn't too long, but that was the longest I had to wait for any of the 4. And Joe, he's a draftsman, studying to be an engineer yet, I guess, if he ever makes it. Tim, he works for in Ada. At Amway.
Keep talking to the camera.
Yeah. And Mike, he's retired, but not by choice. He was injured on the job, firefighter for 17 years for Saginaw Fire Department. And so, but he really misses it. He didn't want to retire because he was a firefighter ever since he was 16 years old. He took his basic fire training. He was still in school, and the school permitted him to carry a radio. They were really good about it. But there was a stipulation there too that if he got a fire call, he wasn't to, make a big deal of it, just to get up and leave. And so he was able to fulfill his duty as a firefighter even when he was in high school. And then he was drafted. He tried to get into the fire school in the military, but there was no openings at that time. And so he got into being a military policeman. And he went to Korea. He had been up to the DMZ 2 or 3 times, at least several times. And he was sent to Honduras. He was in Honduras for 6 months, I think. My hobby is woodworking. I decided I had worked in the grease for about 14 years, and I said, that's enough of that grease and oil. So I quit there and went to work for a furniture store. I did in-home repair service, appliance repair service for almost 30 years, 29 years and 9 months, I guess. And I've been bit by dogs from the pocket size to the biggest. And a Great Dane grabbed me by the arm and she says, no, you're not coming in. I just went back out the truck to get a part. And I told the little girl to take care of that dog. She kept growling at me. There was a box of kittens right in the laundry room where the dryer was, and I was repairing the dryer. And the dog was blocking the door with the laundry room. And I asked the little girl, I says, you take care of the dog. I says, put her in the bedroom or the bathroom until I'm done. I said, that dog don't like me. And she says, oh, that's not the problem. It's those kittens that she's protective of. Yeah, I went back out the truck to get a part for the dryer, and when I came back in, I just stepped through the door and that big dog was right there. And she grabbed me by the arm, and she didn't bite me. She just held on to my arm. And I told him to get a hold of your dog. I said, she's got me by the arm. Well, I didn't know it, but there was a boy about 14, 15 laying on the Davenport. And boy, he come flying in there and grabbed the dog, and then they put the dog in the bedroom. Yeah. But that little teeny dog, he was come off and under the Davenport, so you know how small he was. Little Chihuahua.
Yeah.
He grabbed me by the ankle. He come out and hit my ankle, and I, what in the world is that? I thought it was a rat. He turned around and went back under the Davenport, and you called him Speedy. Boy, he was fast. And I just went on in. I fixed, that was a washer, I think, at that time. Anyway, I got the washer fixed, went back, I was going to leave, that's what it was. And that little bugger come off under the Davenport again, tried to bite me, but he was so small he couldn't, all he could get a hold of was my pant leg. And made beds for my granddaughters. I made beds for my one niece, yeah, it'd be my niece, yeah. And a bed for my nephew, Tim's little girl and boy. And I like to run the lathe. My brother over there bought me a lathe, $1,400. I shouldn't say that, I wasn't supposed to, but I'm proud of that. And I turn about everything you want to look at. I try to turn bowls, but hollowing a bowl is, you gotta have a special tool for doing that. And I've got slapped a few times with the tool, but never got cut trying to hollow a bowl out to build. I've built, what, 3 or 4 or 5 dressers, and I don't know how many nightstands.
Spinning wheels.
Yeah, spinning wheels. I've made a half dozen spinning wheels. I like to make little kids' doll cradles. And I've got, I think, 6 or 7 of them. And none of them are alike because I like to make them all different. It's no fun to make half a dozen alike, you know, that's monotonous. I don't know how many years I worked on that car. I'd work on it for a while and get discouraged because every time I turned around there was more to do. It just seemed like it was never ending. So it was rusty. Nathalie and I went to Indiana, down to South Bend, yeah, and got a frame for it because the frame had rotted right in two. And I pulled the body off in that old frame, and I thought I'd bought a convertible frame because a convertible frame is different than a sedan. It has an X I-beam member in the center of it. Well, I got it home and laid it out beside the old frame, and oops, it was 6 inches too long. Well, you can't stretch the body, so you got to shrink the frame, and that's what I did. I got my measurements all right, figured out where I could take that 6 inches out and still have the frame like the original, the old one. I cut it in two, took chain falls and drawed it back together again, and welded the frame together. And
why Studebakers?
I worked for Studebaker. This was a dealership that was there. And that little convertible, I thought that was really a pretty little car. And it still is. Studebaker was about 20 years ahead of themselves. You would think that was a Mercedes if you didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
Like an older Mercedes, the grill and body. It was an old Harley Davidson. It was a 1948. Yeah, that's been a while ago. Yeah, I rode it up here from down by Owasso, Carlin. On the way up, something told me, and it was kind of strange because I had put my clothes in the car and I was going to take the car, and I said, no, I'd like to ride that bike up north. So I took my clothes out of the car and put them back in the house, and got my gear for the motorcycle, went out and got on the bike, and I was just ready to start it, and no, better not take the bike. So I went back in the house, I got my clothes, put them back in the car, and I said, now this is nonsense. So I took my clothes back in the house, got my gear from the motorcycle. Back then, you didn't wear a helmet. We didn't know what a helmet was. And I took off for up north, and I got up in there by Shepherd, on that curve going around Shepherd, and I run right into a thunderstorm. Well, you know, that's not good when you don't have a rain suit. Anyway, I got a little bit damp there, and got up here, and it turned off real nice after the storm. And I think it was Sunday, yeah, Sunday I was out tearing up and down M66 between Barrett and Remus. And I don't know if the wheel was off the ground when I looked at the speedometer or if it was on the ground, but anyway, it read 80 mile an hour. I'll swear to that. And that the front wheel locked, and that bike did a cartwheel. And there was a guy working on his car right across the road, and he heard the tires squealing. And he said, I bumped my head jerking off and under the hood of the car, and he said, I looked, and he says, here it looked like a human cat. He says, right over the top of the telephone wires, that's when they had telephone wires. He said, I was just spinning like that, and I landed on my feet. But I couldn't run 80 mile an hour, so I did a cartwheel too. And when I stopped, I was rolling, and that bike was bumping me. It was behind me, it kept bumping me along, and I said, I got to get off in front of this thing or it's going to get on top of me. So I pulled my arms and knees up under me, trying to crawl off in front of that, and about that time we all stopped, and that bike was running right wide open, and it was spilling gas, and that guy come out there and grabbed onto it, and well, I crawled away from it, crawled over into the ditch down below it because I was afraid it was going to explode. He grabbed onto that bike and he was going to drag it out of the middle of the highway, and I told him to get away from it. I said, that thing's going to blow up. And he kind of looked at me strange like, and then he ran over by the ditch by me, and well, by that time I guess he decided it wasn't going to, so he did pull it off the road. I was wearing a red long-sleeve nylon, not rayon shirt. It was a rayon, yeah. And the only thing you could have made a patch 2 inches square out of that shirt was the pocket. And I got up and I was going to look at my watch, see what time it was, and my watch fell off. It had cut the band right in two on my wrist and cut part of the face of the watch right off.
So did you break any bones or?
Never broke a bone. The next day I went to the clinic there in Owasso, and well, they took me to the doctor there, old Doc Franklin, and there in Remus. And I swear he took a butcher knife, that's what it looked like, and scraped the gravel out of my arms because they were all raw. Because I tried to pull myself up so I could crawl off in front of the bike. And I had a strip across the top of my head that was red. There's no hair, you know. The doctor said you probably won't have any hair. You'll have a bald spot there. But I guess it grew back. But no, he said I had a concussion. I don't remember how bad, probably it was a minor one.
Did that knock you out?
Not really. I think I was out for maybe 30 seconds at the most. But it really didn't knock me out.